What if a world built on quirks was forced to face power that came from death itself? No hero license, no flashy smile, no need for applause. Just a man who walked through hell alone and came back with an army that obeys his silence. This isn't a story about replacing heroes. It's about what happens when hope meets inevitability, if you love anime crossovers that respect the soul of both worlds. Where power has consequences, silence speaks louder than speeches. And heroism is redefined without breaking what you love. Subscribe and stay. Because when Sung Jin-Woo enters hero society, the shadows don't attack. They watch. Japan has protocols for everything. Earthquakes, villain attacks, unregistered quirks, dimensional anomalies. But the gate doesn't follow protocol. It appears on a quiet street, no warning sirens, no energy spike detected by hero satellites. Just a Chinese letter, Japanese letter, Chinese letter in the air itself, like reality inhaling too deeply and tearing. Pedestrians freeze. Not because it's loud, because it's wrong. The air around the gate feels heavy. Not hostile, not violent, just final. Hero sensors ping late. Too late. By the time emergency systems classify it as an unknown anomaly, the gate is already opening. Slowly, deliberately, as if whatever is inside knows it doesn't need to rush. Black mist pours out first. Not smoke. Shadows thick, layered, alive. They spread across the ground, climbing walls, pooling beneath streetlights that flicker as if reconsidering their purpose. Civilians scream. Heroes mobilize. But no one attacks. Instinct tells them something ancient is stepping forward. A foot emerges. Then a figure. Sung Jin-Woo steps out of the gate like a man leaving a long shift. No dramatic entrance. No pose. Just calm eyes, dark coat, and a presence that makes the street feel smaller. The gate seals behind him. Silence crashes down. Hero teams arrive within seconds. Pro heroes land on rooftops, weapons ready, quirks charged. Unknown individual, someone shouts. Identify yourself and your quirk immediately. Jin-Woo looks around. Confused, not threatened. He sees civilians frozen in fear, heroes tense with obligation, a city balanced on panic. He sighs quietly. I don't have one, he says. The words hit wrong. Scanners activate. Thermal, genetic, quirk factor analysis. No quirk detected. Murmurs ripple through the hero line. That's impossible. Everyone has something. Is he suppressing it? The shadows move. Not aggressively. They shift, forming ranks behind Jin-Woo like soldiers awaiting command. Some kneel. Some watch. All obeys. A pro-hero swallows. If you don't have a quirk, then what are those? Jin-Woo follows their gaze, then answers honestly. My soldiers. The word sends a chill through the street. Not because of menace. Because of certainty. A child trips while backing away from the scene. Before any hero reacts, a shadow detaches itself, lifting the child gently and setting them behind a car. The shadow bows. Returns to formation. The heroes stare. No quirk. No mutation. Yet coordinated rescue. The dread sets in. Not fear of attack. Fear of unexplainable order. Hero society is built on classification. Vire quirks. Transformation quirks. Emitter quirks. Strength has labels. This man does not. From a nearby rooftop, a familiar golden figure watches. All Might stands tall, but his smile is gone. His instincts scream. Not danger. Authority. The kind that doesn't ask permission. All units, a hero commander says carefully, stand down. Jin Wu looks toward the civilians again. They're scared, he says quietly. Yes, the commander replies, because of you. Jin Wu pauses, then gestures lightly. The shadows melt back into the ground, fading until only faint silhouettes remain. The pressure lifts. Breathing becomes easier. People realize they were holding their breaths. I don't want trouble, Jin Wu says. He minds it. That somehow makes it worse. Sirens wail again, this time delayed, confused, overlapping. News drones appear. Cameras hover. Hero society tries to frame the moment. But no one knows what to call him. Not a villain. Not a hero. Not even a quirk user. Just a man who walked out of a gate that shouldn't exist. As Jin Wu turns to leave the street, a shadow lingers behind him, watching the heroes. Evaluating. Not threatening. Measuring. Hero society feels it. The same way prey feels eyes in the dark. Later reports will say, an unregistered anomaly appeared. No quirk detected. No casualties. But the truth is simpler. That day, Hero Society learned something terrifying. Power doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes, it arrives quietly, cleans up after itself, and leaves shadows behind, not as weapons, but as witnesses. Hero Society runs on order. Forms. Categories. Clear lines between who is allowed to act and who is. That's what keeps chaos away. At least that's what they believe. The street is sealed within minutes. Barricades rise. Drones hover. Pro-heroes form a wide circle around the man who walked out of the gate. Not attacking. Not retreating. Containing. At the center stands Sung Jin-Woo, hands relaxed at his sides, expression unreadable. The shadows remain quiet this time. Obedient. Watching. A senior pro-hero steps forward, voice amplified but controlled. Unknown individual, he says, under the Hero Public Safety Act, any use of power in a civilian zone requires registration, classification, and licensing. Jin Wu listens carefully. Really listens. When the hero finishes, Jin Wu nods once. I understand, he says. That surprises them. He isn't defiant. He isn't hostile. He isn't confused by authority. He simply doesn't share its assumptions. What is your quirk? Another hero asks, tablet already glowing with intake forms. I don't have one, Jin Wu replies. The hero hesitates. Then how do you explain the manifestations? Jin Wu glances at the faint silhouettes stretching along the asphalt. They follow me, he says, that's all. The tablet beeps. Error, invalid entries. The system demands a category. Jin Wu offers none. A third hero speaks, sharper now. Without a license, you are prohibited from engaging in rescue or combat activities. Jin Wu blinks. Even if people are in danger. Yes, the hero answers. That's how order is maintained. Jin Wu considers this. Not angrily. Not judgmentally. The way a man considers rules that don't exist where he's from. A scream cuts through the tension. From 3 blocks away. A collapsed building, delayed damage from the earlier anomaly. Dust rises. Civilians trapped. Heroes turn instinctively. Then stop. Protocol flashes through their minds. They're already engaged. They need clearance. Coordination. Jin Wu looks in the direction of the scream, then back at the heroes surrounding him. Should I wait, he asks. The question lands heavy. Before anyone can answer, shadows peel away from his feet. Not violently, not dramatically. They move like water finding cracks, slipping past barricades, flowing toward the collapse. Stop, a hero shouts. But it's already too late. Within seconds, shadows reinforce broken beams, lift rubble, guide civilians out through safe paths. No injuries. No panic. Just efficient, silent rescue. Cameras catch everything. The feed spreads instantly. The heroes stand frozen. They didn't authorize this. They didn't coordinate it. But lives were saved. Cleanly, quietly, Jin Wu watches the operation with distant focus, like a manager overseeing trusted workers. When the last civilian is clear, the shadows return. They kneel, then fade. A hero steps forward, anger cracking through professionalism. You violated the law. Jin Wu nods again. I see. You acted without permission. Yes, you could have caused panic. But I didn't. Silence follows. Because he's right. All power must be accountable, the hero insists. That's what separates heroes from threats. Jin Wu's eyes lift. Not challenging. Not cold. Just tired. Where I'm from, he says quietly, power was never asked if it was allowed. The heroes wait. It only mattered whether people lived. A younger hero mutters, that's not how society works. Jin Wu looks at him. Is it working, he asks. The question isn't sharp. It isn't meant to wound. It's sincere. And that makes it dangerous. Sirens fade. Civilians thank heroes. But some look past them. Toward Jin Wu. Toward the man who saved lives without stepping into the spotlight. Whispers spread. Who was that? He didn't even touch the rubble. Was that a villain? No, he helped. Hero society feels the shift. Attention is power. And it's drifting. A command comes through the heroes' comms. Do not engage, do not escalate, observe. They obey. Jin Wu senses it. This isn't hostility anymore. It's uncertainty. One hero finally asks the question everyone's avoiding. Why didn't you wait for authorization? Jin Wu answers immediately. Because they were running out of time. Simple. Unarguable. He turns to leave. No dramatic exit. No shadow spectacle. Just a man walking down a cordoned street. A hero calls out behind him. Wait, you can't just exist outside the system. Jin Wu pauses. Looks back once. I already do, he says. Then he's gone. Later, in briefing rooms and board offices, debates ignite. Is he a vigilante? A foreign power? A walking disaster? Or something worse? A reminder that the system isn't the only way to save people. Forms remain unfilled. Categories remain blank. And somewhere in hero society's foundation, a quiet fracture forms. Not because Sung Jin-Woo rejected the rules, but because he never needed them. Hero society believes in answers. If something exists, it can be measured. If it can be measured, it can be controlled. That belief has survived villains, disasters, even gods in disguise. But tonight, it breaks. The facility is underground. White walls, clean floors, machines humming with confidence. This is where anomalies go to become data. At the center of the room stands Sung Jin-Woo, calm as ever, hands resting loosely at his sides. He agreed to the examination, not because he was ordered, but because he was asked. Just routine, a technician says, forcing a smile. Quirk factor scan, genetic mapping, energy output analysis. Jin Wu nods. Do what you need. That alone unsettles them. People with power usually resist. Or posture. He does neither. The machines activate. Light passes through his body. X-ray, infrared, quark spectrum resonance. Data scrolls, then slows, then stops. The technician mutters, that's strange. A second technician lines C. Loser. No quirk gene detected. That's impossible, someone says. Run it again. They do. Same result. No mutation. No emitter signature. No biological marker associated with quirks. By every known metric. Sung Jin-Woo is ordinary. But the shadows, a scientist begins. As if on cue, the room darkens slightly. Not because the lights dim, because the shadows deepen. They stretch just a little too far. Bend at angles light shouldn't allow. Independence, aware, watching. Are those part of you? A hero analyst asks carefully. Jin Wu considers the question. They're not a quirk, he says. That answer isn't helpful. What are they, then? He meets their eyes. They're what's left. Silence follows. A doctor clears her throat, left of what? Jin-Woo looks down at his own shadow. For a moment, it doesn't mimic him. It stands taller, broader, armed. Of dying, he says quietly. The room chills. Not metaphorically. Literally. Temperature sensors dip by a fraction of a degree. More tests. More scans. They try psychological profiling next. Threat assessment. Moral alignment. Hero or villain. The system demands a binary. Jin-Woo refuses to fit. Your abilities violate multiple quirk laws, an official says over a monitor. They act autonomously. They persist without activation cues. They obey me, Jin-Woo replies. That still makes them weapons. Jin-Woo tilts his head slightly. Only if you're on the other side. That isn't a threat. It's a statement of fact. A younger scientist whispers, they're not powered by emotion or biology. Another finishes the thought, voice barely audible. They're powered by experience. The room goes quiet again. A shadow detaches from Jin-Woo's feet. Not suddenly. Not aggressively. It walks to the far wall. Places its hand against the surface. The wall frosts over. Not with ice. With absence. Then the shadow returns. Rejoins the others. No damage done. Just a demonstration. Did you command that? Someone asks. Jin Wu shakes his head. They know when to move. That answer terrifies them. Because hero society is built on activation, on triggers, on consent between user and power. These shadows don't wait. They anticipate. The lead analyst exhales slowly. So if this isn't a quirk, he hesitates. What is it? Jin Wu thinks for a long moment, then answers honestly. A consequence. Across the city, discussions ignite. Quirk theory is re-examined. Textbooks feel suddenly outdated. How do you regulate power that isn't inherited, isn't trained, isn't chosen? How do you license something earned through survival? In a quiet observation room, cameras watch Jin Wu sit alone. The shadows line the walls like guards. Protective. Patient. One analyst breaks the silence. If he's not a quirk user, then he's outside our entire framework. Another responds softly. Then maybe the framework isn't complete. Jin Wu stands when the tests end. Am I free to go? He asks. No one stops him. They don't know if they can. As he walks down the hallway, lights flicker behind him. Not malfunctioning. Reacting. The shadows follow like a silent procession. Not ominous. Loyal. Outside, the city feels smaller again. Hero banners wave. Cameras flash elsewhere. Life continues. But something fundamental has shifted. Hero society now knows. Not all power is born. Some of it is survived. And some things, especially shadows, were never meant to be categorized. The smile comes automatically. It always has. For decades, that smile has been the first thing people see and the last thing fear remembers. Broad shoulders, golden hair, a voice that sounds like certainty itself. All Might steps onto the street where the anomaly first appeared, sunlight catching his silhouette like a promise. Civilians relax instantly. Heroes straighten their posture. The world exhales. And then, All Might feels it. Not danger. Not malice. Not the sharp edge of a villain preparing to strike. This is different. This is weight. The kind that doesn't push against you, but presses down through the world itself. At the far end of the street stands Sung Jin-Woo. No dramatic stance. No aura flaring. Just a man in dark clothes, standing still as if the chaos around him were weather passing by. Yet the shadows at his feet do something strange. They don't recoil from All Might's presence. They don't react at all. They simply acknowledge. All Might keeps smiling. Because that's his job. Because symbols don't hesitate. But inside, instincts honed by countless battles whisper a warning he's never heard before. This is not a threat. This is not an enemy. This is authority. He approaches, each step measured, each movement careful not to escalate. Hello there, All Might booms, voice warm and reassuring. I'm glad to see no one was hurt. Jin Wu inclines his head slightly. So am I. No awe, no excitement, no fear. Just acknowledgement, like one professional recognizing another. All Might notices it then. Jin Wu isn't looking at the crowd, or the cameras, or the heroes. He's watching the perimeter. The places where civilians would run, where danger might return. He's already thinking ahead. You handled yourself well, All Might says. Compliments are usually enough to spark something. Pride, gratitude, relief. Jin Wu accepts it quietly. You arrived quickly, he replies. Equal footing. That's unusual. They stand there for a moment. Two figures. Both powerful. Both calm. Yet the balance feels strange. All Might realizes something unsettling. He is projecting reassurance outward. Jin Wu is containing inevitability inward. You're not registered, All Might says gently. But you've already made an impression. Jin Wu glances toward the shadows stretching behind him. I didn't mean to. That's the truth. All Might hears it immediately. And that honesty unsettles him more than arrogance ever could. People look to heroes for hope, All Might continues. They need something to believe in. Jin Wu turns to face him fully now. The shadows subtly realign. Not defensively, respectfully. Where I'm from, Jin Wu says. Hope came after survival. The words land softly, but they carry history. All Might's smile tightens just a fraction. He has fought villains who wanted to rule. Villains who wanted to destroy. Villains who wanted to be worshipped. This man wants none of that. And somehow, that makes him heavier. You carry a lot, All Might says. Not an accusation. An observation. Jin Wu doesn't deny it. I couldn't put it down, he replies. The wind shifts. The shadows ripple. All Might feels it clearly now. This man isn't a hero. He isn't a villain. He's something hero society has no word for. A king. Not of people, but of consequence. All Might thinks of one for all. Of inheritance. Of burden passed from hand to hand. Of smiling even when your body begs you to stop. He looks at Jin Wu again. This man didn't inherit power. He earned it. Alone. You don't smile much, All Might notes lightly. Jin Wu considers the comment. I smile when it helps, he says. That answer stays with All Might. Because it reveals everything. The smile is a tool here. A responsibility. A promise. For Jin Wu. Silence does the work. A hero nearby whispers, is he stronger than you? All Might hears it. Doesn't answer. Because strength isn't the right question. Hero society will want answers, All Might says carefully. Structure, understanding. Jin Wu nods. They usually do. And if those answers don't fit, Jin Wu looks past him to the city, to the people returning to their lives. Then I'll keep doing what I was already doing. Saving people. Without banners. Without approval. All Might feels something unfamiliar settle in his chest. Not rivalries. Not jealousy. Relief. Because for the first time, the burden of being the strongest isn't alone. He extends a hand. A gesture of respect. Jin Wu looks at it. Then takes it. Their handshake is firm. Quiet. The shadows bow not commanded but compelled. All Might's breath catches. Not in fear. In understanding. You don't want to be a symbol, All Might says. Jin Wu mites his gaze. No, he answers. All Might nods slowly. Then perhaps, he says, smiling a little softer now. You'll help us remember why we needed one. They part ways without ceremony. No crowd reaction. No dramatic exit. But as All Might walks away, he realizes something profound. The weight he felt wasn't pressure. It was balance. For the first time in years, the symbol of peace is not standing alone. Izuku Midoriya has always believed heroes announce themselves. With a stance, with a declaration, with a moment that tells the world, I'm here now. That's what he grew up watching. That's what he trained to become. He's standing on the edge of a damaged district when the call comes in. A rogue villain cell, cornered, desperate, lashing out. Pro-heroes prepare to move in formation. Midoriya adjusts his gloves, heart racing the way it always does before a fight. Then he sees him. Sung Jin-Woo is already there. No crowd gathers. No cameras hover. No voice cuts through the chaos. Jin-Woo doesn't shout. He doesn't rush. He simply walks forward. The villains don't notice at first. They're too focused on the heroes forming up. Too focused on escape routes and leverage. By the time they turn, the shadows have already moved. Midoriya freezes. Not in fear, in confusion. Because this isn't how heroics usually look. A shadow slips behind a villain, pinning him without injury. Another disarms a weapon mid-swing, placing it gently on the ground. A third forms a barrier, subtle, precise, shielding trapped civilians from debris. No explosions. No dramatic collisions. Just control. Midoriya's brain kicks into overdrive. No visible activation cue. No verbal command. Multiple independent units acting with coordination. His notebook stays closed. There's no time to write. There's too much to feel. Jin Wu doesn't posture between attacks. He doesn't announce victories. When a villain collapses, restrained by shadow, Jin Wu is already moving on. Efficiency over expression. Results over recognition. Midoriya realizes something unsettling. If this were a hero exercise, Jin Wu would score poorly. No callouts. No crowd management presence. No inspirational dialogue. And yet, everyone is safe. The fight ends quietly. No final blow. No cheering. Just the sound of police cuffs clicking shut. The villains look confused more than defeated. Like they never quite understood what beat them. Midoriya exhales. His hands are shaking. Not from adrenaline. From recalibration. He approaches Jin Wu cautiously. Excuse me, he says, voice catching the way it always does when admiration hits unexpectedly. Jin Wu turns. Listens. Yes. Midoriya bows instinctively. That was incredible. Jin Wu blinks. Was it? Midoriya nods quickly. You handled everything perfectly. No wasted motion. No collateral damage. You prioritize civilians before neutralizing threats. He stops himself. Too much. Always too much. Jin Wu doesn't smile. But he doesn't dismiss it either. I did what was necessary, he says. Midoriya hesitates. Don't you want people to see it? Jin Wu looks back at the cleared street. At the families being escorted home. At the heroes regrouping, already receiving praise. They did, he replies. They're alive. That hits Midoriya harder than any speech. Because he recognizes that thought. It's the version of heroism he felt as a child. Before the cameras. Before the rankings. Before the pressure to perform hope. Is that why you don't pose? Midoriya asks quietly. Jin Wu considers him for a moment. You're very observant, he says. Midoriya stiffens. Sorry. No, Jin Wu continues. It's good. He pauses. Poses are for moments you want remembered. Midoriya nods slowly. And this wasn't one of them. Jin Wu shakes his head. This was just work. Work. The word echoes. Midoriya thinks of long nights training alone. Of clanging beaches. Of holding back fear just to stand up straight. Work that no one clapped for. Work that still mattered. You're a hero, Midoriya says suddenly. Jin Wu looks at him. I never said I wasn't, he replies calmly. The difference lands softly. He didn't deny it. He just didn't need the title to act. Midoriya watches Jin Wu walk away. No send-off. No acknowledgement. Just quiet departure. The shadows follow like a closing curtain. Later that night, Midoriya opens his notebook. He writes one line. Not a technique. Not a statistic. Just a thought. Heroism doesn't require volume. He underlines it twice. For the first time since inheriting One for All, Midoriya feels something loosen inside him. The pressure to perform. To be loud enough. Bright enough. Enough. He looks out the dorm window toward the city. Somewhere out there, a man without a symbol is still working. Saving lives. Without applause. Midoriya smiles. Soft. Hopeful. Not because he wants to be like Sung Jin-Woo, but because he finally understands. Heroes don't have to shine to matter. Sometimes, They just have to be there. The attack doesn't begin with explosions. It begins with confusion. Power outages cascade across 3 districts. Emergency lines jam. Villain signals overlap, too coordinated, too fast. Hero headquarters scrambles. This isn't a single incident. It's a net. By the time pro-heroes mobilize, the damage has already started. Buildings compromised. Transit lines trapped. Civilians scattered in unfamiliar zone. Liza. This is the kind of chaos hero society was built to respond to. But tonight, someone else moves first. From alleyways, basements, and the spaces between streetlights, shadows rise. Not violently, purposefully. Sung Jin-Woo stands on a rooftop miles away, eyes half closed. He isn't watching the villains. He's listening. Through the shadows. Heartbeats. Footsteps. Fear. Go, he says softly. That's all. The shadows split. Some flow into collapsed subway tunnels, forming solid bridges beneath shaking feet. Others slip into burning buildings, reinforcing stairwells long enough for families to escape. A few take the shapes of guides, pointing, shielding, leading. No one sees where they came from. They just know where to go. A mother stumbles in smoke-filled darkness. A shadow lifts her child gently, placing him back into her arms. She gasps. The shadow bows. Moves on. Villains expect resistance. They don't get it. Their attacks hit empty streets. Their threats echo into evacuated spaces. By the time they realize something is wrong, there's no one left to terrorize. Heroes arrive. Finally, sirens cut through the night. Pro-heroes land hard, ready for combat. But they stop short. The streets are clear. No civilians. Minimal damage. Villains confused and isolated. What the? A hero mutters. Another checks their comms. Evacuation reports say civilians are already at safe zones. That's impossible, someone replies. We didn't deploy yet. They look around. Too klein. Too efficient. From the shadows of a nearby building, a figure watches. Not interfering. Not claiming credit. Jin Wu observes silently as heroes do what they were trained to do. Secure villains, stabilize zones, reassure the public. They think they're the first responders. He lets them believe it. Cameras arrive late. News drones capture aftermath, not action. Headlines read. Heroes prevent major casualties in coordinated villain attack. The truth sits between the lines. A pro-hero kneels beside a little girl wrapped in a rescue blanket. You're safe now, he says with a practiced smile. She nods, then asks innocently, where did the Black Knight go? The hero freezes. The what? The Shadow Man, she says. He showed us the way. Reports trickle in. Witness accounts don't match hero timelines. Rescue routes don't align with standard procedures. Structural reinforcements appear where no quirk was recorded. Something moved ahead of them. Something prepared the battlefield. In a quiet alley, Jin Wu turns away from the city. The shadows return to him one by one. No triumph. No celebration. Just completion. A shadow lingers longer than the others. It carries a small shoe, lost in the evacuation. Jin Wu takes it, hands it to a nearby officer without a word. The officer looks up, but Jin Wu is already gone. Later in Hero headquarters, the mood is uneasy. No casualties. Minimal damage. Yet a strange feeling hangs in the air. They were not the fastest. They were not the first. One analyst breaks the silence. If civilians were evacuated before we arrived. Another finishes the thought. Then someone beat us to the save. No one says his name, but everyone thinks it. Hero society prides itself on visibility, on being seen when things go wrong. But tonight, the city learned something new. Sometimes, safety arrives quietly, without uniforms, without applause. On a distant rooftop, Jin Wu watches the sun begin to rise. The shadows stretch long behind him, then settle. Job done. No recognition required. Villains understand heroes. They study them, learn their patrol routes, their limits, their habits. They know when to run. They know when to surrender. They know when to stall until backup arrives. Hero society has rules, and villains survive by exploiting them. That changes quietly, without an announcement, without a broadcast. It starts with whispers. In back alleys and abandoned warehouses, conversations shift. Did you hear what happened to the Black Viper crew? No arrests. No bodies either. They just disappeared. Laughter follows. Nervous laughter. The kind that hopes jokes can outrun fear. Then patterns emerge. Villain activity drops, not dramatically, but selectively. Petty crime continues. Flashy villains still perform. But the organized ones, the planners, the traffickers, the repeat offenders, they vanish from the streets. Hero analysts notice the numbers. Crime is down. Too clean. Too precise. This isn't fear of heroes. This is avoidance. In a dim underground hideout, a group of villains argue in hushed tones. We can take heroes, one snarls. We always do. Another shakes his head violently. Not him. Who? The lights flicker. Shadows stretch along the walls. Someone whispers the name like a curse. Sung Jin-Woo. A younger villain scoffs. He's not even licensed. That's the problem, the older one snaps. Heroes stop when you're down. Silence follows. He does. The words sit heavy. Reports spread. Villains restrained without injury, but never resisting again. Hideouts cleared before alarms trigger. Weapons dismantled while owners sleep. No warnings. No speeches. Just absence. A villain is caught by pro-heroes one night, hands shaking, eyes hollow. You're safe now, a hero says, placing cuffs gently. The villain laughs hysterically. Safe, he gasps, you think I'm scared of you. The hero frowns. Then why weren't you running? The villain's smile collapses. Because hunters don't take prisoners. That line spreads faster than any rumor. Heroes arrest you. Hunters end you. Jin Wu never confirms it. He never threatens. He never needs to. The shadows do not attack civilians. They do not escalate unnecessarily. But when villains cross certain lines, human trafficking, mass casualties, irredeemable intent, they are found. A notorious villain leader barricades himself inside a fortified compound, broadcasts threats, challenges heroes openly. "Come get me," he shouts into the camera. "I dare you." Heroes prepare for a siege. Negotiation teams assemble. Jin Wu does not appear. That night, the broadcast cuts out. No explosion. No fight footage. Just silence. In the morning, the compound stands untouched. Empty. The leader is gone. No ransom. No message. Villains stop posturing. Stop announcing crimes. Stop challenging authority. They adapt, not by escalating, but by hiding. Hero society struggles with the optics. Crime rates drop. Lives are saved. But something about this feels uncomfortable. Fear is working, but it isn't their fear. Shota Aizawa watches the reports quietly. "They're not afraid of justice," he mutters. A fellow hero nods slowly. "They're afraid of inevitability." On a rooftop overlooking the city, Jin Wu stands alone. The shadows stir faintly at his feet. Not eager, not restless, waiting. He doesn't hunt constantly, only when knighted. That restraint is what terrifies them most. A shadow rises beside him, shows him an image. A villain abandoning a plan, burning documents, fleeing the city. Jin Wu turns away. Good. Hero society was built on hope, on the idea that people could change, that villains could be stopped, reformed, redeemed. Jin Wu doesn't contradict that. He just exists alongside it. As a reminder, some threats don't fear hope. They fear consequences. And in the criminal underworld, a new rule spreads. Unwritten, unspoken, absolute. Avoid heroes if you can. Avoid hunters at all costs. Because mercy is negotiable. But inevitability is not, say. And we'll step inside UA High, where students train beside a monarch of shadows and learn that strength is not about domination, but responsibility. The training ground fell silent as Sung Jin-Woo stepped onto the field, his dark coat trailing behind him like a shadow given form. The students of Class 1A had faced villains, survived attacks, and pushed their quirks to their limits, but none of them had ever stood before someone whose very presence seemed to bend the air around him. This wasn't All Might's booming charisma or Endeavor's scorching intensity. This was something colder, deeper, more ancient. Jinwoo's gray eyes swept across the gathered students with the calm assessment of a predator who had long since stopped needing to prove anything. He wasn't here to show off. He wasn't here to compete. He was here because Aizawa had asked him a simple question the night before. Can you teach them what it means to survive when strength isn't enough? Midoriya's hand trembled slightly as he gripped his notebook, his analytical mind already racing through possibilities. Bakugo's jaw clenched, his palms crackling with suppressed explosions, pride warring with the uncomfortable awareness that this wasn't an opponent he could simply blast through. Todoroki's heterochromatic eyes remained steady, ice already forming at his fingertips, not from hostility, but from instinct. Even Ida stood at attention, engines primed, though his usual confidence seemed muted. They were heroes in training, yes. They had faced down the League of Villains, but Jinwoo was something else entirely. He was a man who had climbed from the weakest hunter in the world to someone who commanded an army of shadows and had killed beings that could end civilizations. And yet, as he looked at these teenagers, these children playing at war, his expression softened almost imperceptibly. Strength, Jinwoo began, his voice quiet but carrying effortlessly across the field, is not about who hits hardest or who has the most impressive quirk. He paused, letting the words settle. It's about whether you're still standing when everything goes wrong. It's about the decisions you make when you're terrified and exhausted, and every instinct tells you to run. He raised one hand, and from his shadow, a single soldier emerged, not the monstrous elite knights or the terrifying Baru, but a simple shadow soldier, human-shaped and unadorned. Today, you're not fighting me, you're fighting yourselves, your hesitation, your assumptions, your limits. The shadow soldier took a combat stance and Jin Woo's eyes found Midoriya first. "You, step forward." Deku moved before he could overthink it, green lightning already crackling around his body as One for All surged through him at 8%. He'd learned to control it better, to distribute the power evenly, but facing even one of Jin Woo's shadows made his danger sense scream. The shadow moved with inhuman speed, not faster than Deku could track, but faster than he expected, and its blade swept toward his midsection. Midoriya blocked, the impact sending vibrations up his arms, and countered with a Detroit smash that should have shattered the construct. Instead, the shadow dissolved into darkness, reformed behind him and struck the back of his knee with precise, measured force. Not enough to injure, just enough to buckle his stance. Deku rolled, came up swinging, analyzed the pattern, adjusted his approach, and found the shadow waiting exactly where his analysis predicted he'd move. The flat of the blade tapped his chest. A killing blow, if Jin Wu had wanted it to be. "Stop," Jin Wu said, and the shadow froze. Midoriya was breathing hard, frustration and confusion warring on his face. "You're thinking like a hero," Jin Wu continued, walking closer. "Like someone who has backup coming, like someone who can afford to trade blows because Recovery Girl will patch you up afterward." His eyes were kind but merciless. "In a real fight, the kind where no one is coming to save you, that thinking gets you killed. You have power, Midoriya, incredible power. But you're so focused on controlling it, on not hurting yourself or others, that you fight defensively even when attacking." He gestured to the shadow. "It knew you'd dodge left because your entire stance telegraphed caution. Be decisive. When you commit to a strike, commit completely. Survival isn't about minimizing risk. It's about ending threats before they end you." The lesson continued, student after student stepping forward. Bakugo charged in with his usual explosive aggression, only to find his blast countered by the shadow's strategic positioning. Each explosion redirected, each charge anticipated until Bakugo was forced to actually think instead of simply overpowering. "Anger is a tool," Jin Wu told him as Bakugo panted, sweat dripping from his blonde hair. "But if it's all you have, you're predictable." "The strongest enemies I've faced didn't roar and charge. They calculated, they waited, they struck when I thought I was safe." Bakugo's pride warred with the truth of those words, his crimson eyes searching Jin Wu's face for any hint of mockery. Finding none, only the hard-won wisdom of someone who had survived impossible odds, he nodded curtly and stepped back. Todoroki's turn revealed a different problem. His quirk was devastatingly powerful, ice and fire both capable of overwhelming most opponents, but he fought with a strange detachment, as if going through practiced motions. The shadow pressed him hard, forcing him to use both sides of his power in rapid succession, but there was no desperation in Todoroki's eyes, no real fear. "You fight like someone who believes they can't lose," Jin Wu observed, his voice quiet. "That confidence will kill you." "I've seen S-rank hunters die because they couldn't imagine their own death until the blade was already in their chest." He stepped closer to Todoroki, his gaze steady. "Power is a responsibility because when you have it, people depend on you to use it right, to use it fully. Fighting at half strength because you're afraid of what your full power means, that's not protection, that's cowardice." The word hung in the air like a slap. Todoroki's eyes widened fractionally, ice spreading across the ground at his feet in an unconscious reaction. But Jin Wu didn't flinch. "I don't know what you're running from," he said, his voice gentler now. "But in a real fight, your enemy doesn't care about your trauma. They'll kill you and everyone behind you while you're still deciding whether you're allowed to win." The ice stopped spreading. Todoroki's breath came faster, decades of his father's abuse, and his own conflicted feelings about his power warring with this stranger's blunt assessment. But there was no judgment in Jin Wu's eyes, only understanding. The understanding of someone who had also fought himself as much as his enemies. As the sun climbed higher, Jin Wu sparred with each student in turn, and a pattern emerged. He never truly hurt them. His shadows pulled strikes that could have shattered bones, deflected attacks that could have maimed, but every student left each engagement with bruises, not of the body, but of the ego. Uraraka learned that making herself weightless made her predictable in three-dimensional combat. Iida discovered that pure speed without adaptability was just fast failure. Kirishima found that hardening against every blow exhaust. Him faster than selective defense. Ashido realized that her acid's versatility was wasted if she only used it as a projectile. Each lesson was personal, specific, born from Jin Wu's own experience clawing his way up from the bottom. But the most important moment came when Aizawa called for a full team exercise. All of Class 1A against Jin Wu's shadows, not to win, but to survive for 5 minutes. Jin Wu released a dozen soldiers, still far from his full power, but enough to put real pressure on the students. and for the first 2 minutes it was chaos. Everyone fought as individuals, each student relying on their own quirk, their own strategy, their own pride. The shadows cut through them like wheat, non-lethal strikes landing again and again, points of failure accumulating. Midoriya tried to coordinate, but his voice was lost in the noise of battle. Bakugo refused to follow anyone's lead. Todoroki fought alone on the flank. They were strong, but they weren't a team. "Stop," Jin Wu commanded, and everything froze. The students stood in the aftermath, breathing hard, costumes torn, pride wounded. "You're heroes in training," he said, walking among them. "But you're fighting like hunters, solo players who happen to be on the same field." He turned to face them all, his expression serious. "The strongest thing about me isn't my shadows or my stats or any single ability. It's that I learned through pain and death and watching people I cared about fall. That survival isn't about being the strongest. It's about being the most adaptable, the most aware, the most willing to change." He gestured at them. "You have something I never had at your age. You have each other, but you're so busy being individually strong that you're collectively weak." The second attempt was different. Midoriya's tactical mind found room to breathe when Bakugo swallowed his pride enough to create openings. Todoroki's ice gave Uraraka platforms to attack from above. Kirishima's hardening protected Gyro while she used her sound waves to disorient the shadows. Iida's speed became a force multiplier as he carried others into strategic positions. They lasted 4 minutes and 30 seconds, still not the full 5, but the improvement was staggering. When Jin Wu finally called the halt, there was something new in the students' eyes. Not victory, not even satisfaction, but understanding. "Strength," Jin Wu said as they gathered around him, exhausted but attentive, "becomes responsibility the moment someone else depends on you. Every person you save, every villain you stop, every choice you make, it all matters because you have the power to make it matter." His gray eyes swept across their young faces, seeing echoes of his own journey in their determination. "I didn't choose to become strong. It was survive or die. But you're choosing this path. You're choosing to bear the weight of protecting others. That makes you either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish." A slight smile touched his lips, probably both. As the training session ended and the students limped toward the locker rooms, Aizawa approached Jin Wu, his tired eyes showing rare approval. "You didn't go easy on them," the erasure hero observed. Jin Wu shook his head. "The world won't go easy on them. Villains won't. Why should I?" He watched the students' retreating backs, noting how they helped each other, how the experience had bonded them in small ways. "But I didn't break them either." There's a difference between teaching someone to survive and traumatizing them into fear. His shadows began to sink back into his darkness. They're good kids, strong quirks, strong hearts. They just needed to understand that strength isn't about competition. It's about being strong enough to protect what matters when it matters most. That night in the 1A dormitory, the students gathered in the common room, comparing bruises and discussing the day's lessons. Midoriya's notebook was filled with new observations, not about quirks, but about tactics, about reading opponents, about the psychology of combat. Bakugo sat uncharacteristically quiet, his usual bluster muted by the realization that raw power had its limits. Todoroki stared at his hands, ice forming and melting on one side, flames flickering on the other, perhaps seeing them differently now. Not as symbols of his father's legacy, but as tools he could choose to master. And across all their faces was the same expression, the sobering awareness that being a hero meant more than having power. It meant knowing when to use it, how to use it, and most importantly, who to use it for. Jin Wu's lesson had been painful, humbling, and absolutely necessary. Strength had become responsibility, and they were finally beginning to understand what that truly meant. The question came during a late-night strategy session at UA, when the usual barriers between teacher and student had softened in the exhaustion of a long day. Midoriya hadn't meant to ask it. The words simply escaped him as he watched Jin Wu standing by the window, silhouette framed against the city lights, looking every bit the solitary figure he'd always been. "Jin Wu-san," the green-haired student said, his voice cutting through the quiet hum of the conference room. "With everything you can do, all the power you have, why don't you call yourself a hero?" The room fell silent. Aizawa's eyes opened fractionally from where he sat in his sleeping bag. All Might in his deflated form straightened slightly. Even the normally boisterous students present, Bakugo, Todoroki, Iida, Uraraka, went still, suddenly aware they were about to witness something significant. Jin Wu didn't turn immediately. He continued looking out at the sprawling cityscape of Musutafu, at the lights representing millions of people going about their lives, unaware of the monsters that had been stopped in shadows. the disasters averted by someone they'd never thank because they'd never know he existed. "Because I don't need to be seen," Jin Wu answered finally, his voice calm and measured, as if he'd considered this question 1,000 times before. He turned from the window, gray eyes reflecting the fluorescent lights with an almost otherworldly quality. "In my world, hunters became celebrities. Their rankings were public. Their accomplishments were broadcast. They had fan clubs and endorsement deals and press conferences." A slight, humorless smile touched his lips. "The strongest among them loved it, the adoration, the recognition, the proof that they mattered. But I learned something fighting in the shadows, crawling through dungeons that no camera would ever see. The moment you need recognition for doing what's right, you've already lost the point." Midoriya's pen hovered over his notebook, his analytical mind racing. This wasn't how heroes were supposed to think. All Might had literally built his entire career on being the symbol of peace, visible, present, inspiring. The hero rankings existed specifically to give the public faces they could trust, names they could call on, symbols they could believe in. But, Midoriya ventured carefully, doesn't being visible give people hope? All Might always said that a hero's job is to smile and make people feel safe. If nobody knows you're there, how can they? "Feel safe," Jin Wu interrupted gently, not unkindly. He walked toward the conference table, his footsteps silent despite his boots, and leaned against it with casual grace. "Tell me something, Midoriya. When I stopped the Namu attack 2 weeks ago, when I eliminated that villain cell planning to bomb the shopping district last month, when I closed the dimensional rift that would have released S-rank monsters into downtown Tokyo, did anyone feel unsafe?" He let the question hang in the air. "No, because they never knew the danger existed. They went to work, went to school, lived their lives completely unaware that they'd almost died. And isn't that better? Isn't living without fear superior to needing constant reassurance that someone will save you?" Bakugo scoffed from his seat, arms crossed defensively, but there was something uncertain in his eyes. "That's bullshit. Heroes aren't about hiding. We're supposed to inspire people, show them that good wins, that justice." "Justice?" Jinwoo repeated, and there was something almost sad in how he said it. "I've killed thousands, Bakugo. Monsters, yes, beings that would have destroyed everything if left alive. But I've also killed humans, enemy hunters, those who stood in my way, people who chose power over morality." He met Bakugo's crimson gaze steadily. "If I stood in the light, if I wore a costume and smiled for cameras, people would demand to know where I came from. They'd investigate my methods. They'd question every kill, every decision, every time I chose efficiency over their comfort. They'd want me to fit into their system, follow their rules, limit my power to what makes them feel in control." His voice remained calm, factual, without anger or defensiveness. "So I ask you, would you prefer a hero who saves fewer people but makes you feel good about how he does it, or someone who saves everyone but disturbs your sense of moral simplicity?" The question cut through the room like one of Jinwoo's daggers. All Might stirred, his sunken eyes troubled. "Young Jinwoo," he said in that raspy voice so different from his heroic boom, "I understand your perspective, truly I do. But heroism isn't just about results. It's about setting an example, showing people that they too can be brave, can stand up, can make a difference. If the symbol of peace operates entirely in shadow, what symbol does that send? That ordinary people should simply trust that someone, somewhere, is handling things." "Yes," Jinwoo said simply, "because most of the time they can't handle it themselves, and pretending they can gets them killed." He straightened, his presence seeming to expand in tea. He confined space. "All Might, you are perhaps the greatest hero this world has produced. Your smile has saved countless lives beyond the villains you've stopped. I respect that immensely. But tell me, what happens when you can't smile anymore? What happens when the symbol cracks?" He gestured at All Might's diminished form. "You're already living that reality. Your power is fading. Soon you won't be able to maintain that image at all. And when that happens, what becomes of the hope you've built?" The silence that followed was suffocating. Everyone in the room knew All Might's secret, knew about One for All's time limit, knew that the symbol of peace was living on borrowed time. Midoriya's hands clenched into fists, emotion warring with logic. "That's why we're training," he said, voice shaking slightly. "So that when All Might can't be there, we can carry on his legacy. Multiple heroes working together, being visible and brave and creating dependencies," Jinwoo finished quietly. "Don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying your way is wrong. I'm saying it's different. In this world, with quirks being common, with heroes being an established system, visibility serves a purpose. But where I come from, showing strength attracted enemies. It painted targets. The moment other nations knew what I could do, they tried to use me, control me, eliminate me." His gray eyes swept across each face in the room. "I learned to be a shadow because shadows survive. They can't be targeted. They can't be manipulated. They simply do what needs doing and fade away. Aizawa, who had been silent until now, spoke from his sleeping bag cocoon. That's a lonely way to live. It wasn't a question. Jin Wu's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes, acknowledgement perhaps. Yes, he agreed. It is. I have my shadows, my army of the dead, but they're bound to me through power, not choice. I had people I cared about, still do, but the stronger I became, the wider the gap grew between us. They couldn't follow where I went. Couldn't understand the choices I had to make. He paused, seeming to consider his next words carefully. But loneliness is a price I'm willing to pay if it means the people I care about get to live normal lives. If my sister can go to school without being kidnapped to leverage my power. If my friends can work their ordinary jobs without becoming targets. If millions of people can sleep safely without ever knowing my name. His voice remained steady, factual, but underneath it ran a current of absolute conviction. That's not heroism to you. I understand that, but it's what I am. Todoroki leaned forward, his heterochromatic eyes intense. But doesn't that contradict itself? If you don't want recognition, why are you here? Why train with us, work with UA, reveal yourself to us at all? It was a fair question, one that had clearly been building in the dual quirk user's mind. Jin Wu's lips quirked in something that might have been a smile. Because I'm not stupid enough to think isolation is strength. I work alone, yes. But I'm not arrogant enough to believe I have all the answers. He gestured around the room. Your world has been dealing with powered individuals for generations. You've built systems, ethics, training protocols. I can learn from that, and perhaps, he hesitated, choosing words carefully, perhaps some of you can learn from my perspective, not to replace your heroism, but to complement it. You're saying there's room for both approaches, Iida said, his hand raised formally despite the casual setting, mind working through the implications. Heroes who stand in the light and inspire, and what would you call yourself? Guardians who work in shadow, Jin Wu shrugged. I don't call myself anything. Labels are for others to assign. I simply do what's necessary. Sometimes that means working with heroes, providing intelligence, handling threats too sensitive for public consumption. Sometimes it means acting alone. The point isn't the title, it's the result. Uraraka, who had been unusually quiet, spoke up hesitantly. But doesn't it bother you that people don't appreciate what you do, don't even know? There was genuine curiosity in her voice, not judgment. Jin Wu considered the question seriously. There was a time it would have, he admitted. When I was weak, when I was looked down on and called the weakest hunter, I dreamed of proving everyone wrong, of showing them all how strong I'd become. His eyes grew distant, remembering a version of himself that seemed impossibly far away. But then I actually became strong enough that their opinions stopped mattering. Strong enough that their recognition or lack thereof changed nothing about what I could accomplish. He focused back on Uraraka. The satisfaction now comes from knowing I made a difference, not from being told I did. Bakugo stood abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. This is all philosophical bullshit. He snarled, but there was less heat in it than usual. Bottom line, you do things your way, we do things ours. Fine, but don't act like your way is automatically better just because it's more mysterious or whatever. He jabbed a finger at Jin Wu. Heroes put their faces and names out there because we're not afraid. We want villains to know exactly who's coming for them. We want people to know who saved them so they can save themselves next time. That's not weakness. That's courage. You're right, Jin Wu said, and the immediate agreement seemed to take the wind out of Bakugo's sails. It does take courage to stand in the light, to let yourself be seen and judged and criticized, to smile when you're exhausted, to inspire when you're terrified, to carry the weight of public expectation along with everything else. He stood straight, meeting Bakugo's aggressive stance with calm certainty. But it also takes courage to work in darkness, to accept that you'll never receive gratitude. To make impossible choices knowing nobody will ever understand why. To carry the burden of actions you can't explain and victories you can't celebrate. His voice remained even. Different kinds of courage, not better or worse, just different. All Might rose from his seat, his thin frame somehow still carrying authority. Young Jin Wu, I think I understand what you're saying. And perhaps you're right that our world has become too dependent on visible symbols. The chaos after my retirement announcement proved that. Pain flickered across his gaunt features. But I still believe that heroes must inspire hope, not just provide safety. People need something to believe in, especially children. If every hero worked in shadow, what would they aspire to become? Heroes, Jin Wu answered immediately. Just different kinds. Some would still choose the light, people like Midoriya who genuinely want to save everyone with a smile. Others might choose support roles, working behind the scenes to enable frontline heroes. Others still might choose investigation, intelligence, strategic planning. He gestured broadly. The problem isn't visibility itself. It's the assumption that all heroism must look the same, that there's only one valid path to protecting people. Aizawa finally emerged from his sleeping bag, standing with his characteristic slouch. "You're describing a paradigm shift," he said bluntly. "The entire hero ranking system, the licensing structure, the public relations machinery, it all assumes heroes are public figures. What you're suggesting would undermine the economic and social foundations of how heroism works in this society." He fixed Jin Wu with a penetrating stare. "Are you prepared for the consequences of that?" Because once these kids start questioning the system, once they realize there are other ways to use their power, you can't put that genie back in the bottle. Jin Wu held Aizawa's gaze. "I'm not trying to dismantle your system, Aizawa. I'm simply refusing to be absorbed by it. You can run your hero rankings, your licensing, your public image campaigns, but don't expect me to participate just because it's traditional. I'll work with heroes when our goals align. I'll train students who want to learn what I can teach, but I won't stand on a podium and accept an award for doing what should be done regardless of recognition." The room fell into contemplative silence. Each person present was grappling with different aspects of Jin Wu's philosophy. Midoriya with how it contrasted with All Might's teachings, Bakugo with whether refusing recognition was strength or cowardice, Todoroki with the appeal of existing outside a system that had failed him personally, Aizawa with the practical implications for hero society. Finally, Midoriya spoke again, voice thoughtful. "Jin Wu-san, can I ask one more thing?" Jin Wu nodded. "If you don't call yourself a hero and you don't want recognition, then what drives you? What makes you keep fighting when you could just walk away, live quietly?" For the first time, Jin Wu's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Responsibility," he said quietly. "I have power, more than almost anyone in either of our worlds. That power came at a cost. People died for it, died around me while I grew strong enough to save them. Every level I gained, every shadow I raised, every skill I mastered was bought with someone's blood." His hands clenched briefly. "I can't pretend that didn't happen. Can't pretend I don't have the ability to prevent it from happening to others. So I use what I have because the alternative, having this power and doing nothing, is unacceptable." "That," All Might said softly, "is the truest definition of heroism I've ever heard." The emaciated symbol of peace looked at Jin Wu with new respect. "You may not call yourself a hero, young Jin Wu, but your actions speak louder than any title. Perhaps the world needs both, heroes who stand in the light and inspire, and guardians who work in shadow and protect, different faces of the same commitment to preserving life and peace." Jin Wu inclined his head slightly, acknowledging the words. "Perhaps, though I suspect your hero commission wouldn't appreciate the distinction." A hint of dry humor colored his voice. "They've already tried to recruit me 3 times. Each time I've refused, they've grown more insistent. Apparently, the most powerful individual in Japan, not being part of their official roster, makes them uncomfortable." Aizawa snorted. "Of course it does. You're an uncontrolled variable. Power without oversight is their worst nightmare." He looked at Jin Wu appraisingly. "For what it's worth, I respect your position. Not everyone with power needs to become a circus performer, but be prepared, the more public incidents you prevent, the more questions you'll face. Eventually, someone will connect the dots, will demand answers. What then?" "Then I'll do what I've always done," Jin Wu said simply. "What needs to be done, regardless of what others think about it. They can investigate, demand, threaten. None of it changes the fundamental reality. I'm stronger than anyone they could send to stop me, and I'm not interested in being controlled." There was no arrogance in the statement, just fact. "I didn't ask for this power, but I have it, and I'll use it on my terms, not theirs." As the meeting finally broke up, students filing out with much to think about, Midoriya lingered behind. "Jin Wu-san," he said hesitantly, "I think I understand what you're saying, about not needing recognition, but," he clutched his notebook to his chest, "I still want to be like All Might. I want to inspire people, make them feel safe, be someone they can believe in. Does that make me naive?" Jin Wu studied the earnest young hero for a long moment. "No," he said finally. "It makes you exactly what this world needs. Someone who genuinely believes in heroism as an ideal, not just as a job or a duty. Never lose that, Midoriya. The world is dark enough. It needs people willing to stand in the light." He placed a hand briefly on Midoriya's shoulder. "I work in shadows because that's where I'm most effective, but shadows only exist because of light. Your way and mine, they're complementary, not contradictory. Remember that." As Midoriya left, processing this new perspective, Jin Wu returned to the window. The city stretched before him, millions of lights representing millions of lives. lives that would never know his name, never thank him, never even realize how close they'd come to destruction. And that was exactly how he preferred it. Because heroism without identity, protection without recognition, sacrifice without glory, these weren't weaknesses to Jin Wu. They were the purest form of strength. The strength to do what was right simply because it needed doing, with no reward except the knowledge that somewhere, someone got to live another day. That was the Shadow Monarch's way. And if it shook the hero system to its foundations, well, perhaps foundations built on fame and rankings needed to be shaken. The coffee shop was nearly empty at 3 in the morning, the kind of hole-in-the-wall establishment that catered to insomniacs, night shift workers, and people who had given up on normal sleep schedules entirely. Shoto Aizawa sat in the corner booth, his usual spot when patrol ended and genuine rest still felt hours away, nursing his 4th cup of black coffee and reviewing incident reports on his tablet. He didn't look up when the bell above the door chimed softly, didn't react when footsteps approached his table with that peculiar silence that marked someone who knew how to move unseen. He simply shifted slightly, making room, and continued reading as Sung Jin-Woo slid into the seat across from him without invitation or greeting. For a full 3 minutes, neither man spoke. The only sounds were the hiss of the espresso machine, the tired baker in the back preparing tomorrow's pastries, and the occasional rustle of Aizawa's papers. "You don't sleep much," Jin Wu finally observed, his gray eyes tracking the dark circles under Aizawa's own that rivaled his capture weapon in their depth and permanence. It wasn't a question. Aizawa's lips quirked in something that wasn't quite a smile. "Says the man I've spotted on rooftops at 4 a.m. 3 times this week." He took another sip of coffee, finally looking directly at Jin Wu. "Though I suppose when you can summon shadow soldiers to patrol for you, sleep becomes more optional." Jin Wu's expression didn't change, but there was a flicker of something, acknowledgement, perhaps in his eyes. They're effective scouts, but some things require personal attention. He gestured vaguely toward the window, toward the city sprawling in darkness beyond. "You understand that better than most." Aizawa set down his tablet, giving Jin Wu his full attention in that unnerving way he had, the gaze of someone who saw through bullshit and performative heroics to the truth underneath. "I've been watching you," he said bluntly. "Not investigating, not reporting, just observing." He leaned back, arms crossed. "You move through this city like someone who's done this before. Not the fighting, obviously you've done plenty of that, but the other part, the part most heroes never think about, territory assessment, pattern recognition, threat evaluation before it becomes a threat." His dark eyes narrowed slightly. "You operate like an underground hero, but you're not one, so what are you?" It was the question others had danced around for weeks, Present Mike with his cheerful nosiness, All Might with his earnest concern, even the students with their curious speculation. But Aizawa asked it differently, not demanding an explanation or searching for something to be suspicious about, but simply acknowledging a reality he'd already pieced together and seeking confirmation. Jin Wu appreciated the directness. "In my world, we called people like me hunters. Solo players who cleared dungeons, killed monsters, survived impossible odds for a paycheck." He accepted a coffee from the waitress who appeared silently, nodded his thanks. "But the title doesn't matter. What matters is that I learned early that the ones who survived longest weren't the strongest or the flashiest. They were the ones who understood that every dungeon had patterns, that threats could be read and predicted, that reputation was a liability as often as an asset." "Underground philosophy," Aizawa confirmed, something like approval in his tone. "The hero rankings, the media coverage, the celebrity culture, it all gets people killed, makes them predictable, makes them targets, makes them soft." He gestured at himself with a trace of dark humor. "I learned that the hard way. Wanted to be a spotlight hero once, back when I was young and stupid. Then I watched my best friend die because villains knew exactly where he'd be, exactly how he'd respond, exactly what his limits were. All information helpfully provided by his public profile and ranking statistics." Jin Wu's eyes sharpened with understanding. "Aburo Shirakumo." Aizawa went very still, his hand tightening imperceptibly around his coffee cup. Jin Wu raised a placating hand. "I'm not psychic. Your current employer was willing to share certain information when I asked why UA's most effective teacher deliberately tanks his public image and refuses spotlight assignments despite being more than capable." He met Aizawa's suddenly guarded gaze steadily. "I know what it's like to lose people because you weren't strong enough, fast enough, smart enough. And I know what it's like to fundamentally change yourself to make sure it never happens again." The tension held for a moment, then slowly drained from Aizawa's shoulders. "You researched me." It wasn't accusatory, just observational. Of course you did, you wouldn't work with people blind. He took another drink, considering. What else did Nezu tell you? Jin Wu shrugged slightly. Enough to understand why you erase your own presence from hero databases, why you take underground patrol routes that never appear in official reports. Why you train your students to think like survivors instead of celebrities. He paused. And why you haven't reported me to the Hero Commission despite having more than enough information to identify me as a potential threat. Are you, Aizawa asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. A threat, Jin Wu considered the question seriously. To villains, absolutely. To corrupt systems that prioritize image over results, probably. To innocent people, he shook his head. Never intentionally, but my methods aren't clean, they're not PR-friendly, and they don't fit neatly into your licensing and ranking structures. His gray eyes held Aizawa's dark ones. So in answer to your question, I'm a threat to anyone who values process over outcome, which is why the Commission wants me controlled and why you haven't turned me in. A ghost of a smile crossed Aizawa's tired features. You're not wrong. The Commission is already having fits about your existence. An unregistered individual with S-class power operating independently, their worst nightmare. He leaned forward slightly. They've asked me to get closer to you, assess your threat level, determine your weaknesses, report on your activities. Jin Wu's expression didn't change, waiting. I told them you're a low priority. That you mostly handle issues outside UA's jurisdiction, and that your interaction with students has been educational rather than concerning. Aizawa's smile turned slightly sharper. I may have also implied that any attempt to forcibly recruit or detain you would likely result in casualties they're not prepared to accept. Accurate assessment, Jin Wu acknowledged, though I'd prefer to avoid that scenario entirely. He studied Aizawa with the same careful attention Aizawa had given him. Yo. You were protecting me. Why? We barely know each other. For all you know, I could be planning something catastrophic. Aizawa snorted, a rare sound of genuine amusement. Please, I've been teaching teenagers with godlike quirks and zero impulse control for years. I can read people. And you, he gestured at Jin Wu. You move like someone who's tired. Not physically, your conditioning is obviously perfect, but tired of fighting, tired of proving yourself, tired of the game. He tapped his fingers against his cup. That's not the profile of someone planning destruction. That's someone who wants to be left alone to do their job without bureaucratic interference. The accuracy of the observation settled between them like a shared understanding. Jin Wu was quiet for a moment, then spoke with unusual candor. In my world, I reached the top, became the strongest, commanded an army, had nations courting my favor and others fearing my existence. His voice carried a weight that had nothing to do with pride. And I discovered that absolute power is absolutely exhausting. Every decision scrutinized, every action interpreted as a political statement. Every moment of peace interrupted by someone who wanted something from me. He looked out the window at the dark city. This world, your world, I'm nobody here. Just another person with powers in a society full of them. It's refreshing. Until it's not, Aizawa said, his tone understanding rather than pessimistic. Eventually, you'll do something too public to ignore, save too many people, stop a threat too visible, and then the machine will come for you, the commission, the media, the rankings boards. They'll want to categorize you, monetize you, control you. He met Jin Wu's eyes. What happens then? It was the same question others had asked, but from Aizawa it carried different weight. Not concern about public safety or hero society's stability, but genuine curiosity about Jin Wu's contingency planning. Then I disappear, Jin Wu said simply. I've done it before. One of the advantages of my particular abilities, I can create gates to other locations. If this world becomes too complicated, I find another one, repeat as necessary. He said it matter-of-factly, without drama or threat. I'm not attached to geography, only to principles. If I can operate effectively here, I will. If I can't, I won't. Aizawa nodded slowly, processing this. That's the most honest answer anyone's given me about their long-term plans. Most heroes feed me lines about serving society and upholding justice and other noble-sounding nonsense. He finished his coffee. You just admit you'll cut and run if the circumstances aren't favorable. I respect that. Most people would call it cowardice, Jin Wu observed without judgment, running instead of fighting to change the system. Aizawa's laugh was short and bitter. Most people are idiots who have never actually tried to change a system. I've been teaching at UA for over a decade, training the next generation of heroes to think critically, to question authority, to prioritize substance over style. You know what I've accomplished? He spread his hands. A handful of genuinely competent heroes who get ignored in rankings because they don't have flashy quirks or marketable personalities. Meanwhile, spotlight heroes with half the skill get endorsement deals and billboard space. So why do you stay? Jin Wu asked, genuinely curious now. If the system frustrates you this much, why not walk away? Operate independently like I do. It was Aizawa's turn to look out the window, his expression contemplative. Because someone has to teach these kids that there's more than one way to be a hero. That heroism isn't about fame or glory or seeing your face on merchandise. Some of them, like young Midoriya or Todoroki, they need that counterbalance. They need to see that you can be effective without being a celebrity. He looked back at Jin Wu. You asked why I'm protecting you instead of reporting you. It's because you're living proof of my entire teaching philosophy. Power without publicity, results without recognition, competence without compromise. Jin Wu absorbed this, understanding clicking into place. You're using me as an example for your students. Aizawa didn't deny it. Your training sessions, your conversations with them, the way you operate, it's all demonstrating alternatives to the traditional hero path. Midoriya especially needs to see that All Might's way isn't the only way, that you can protect people without smiling for cameras. He pulled out his phone, scrolled through something. After your last session with Class 1A, I had 3 students ask me about underground hero work. 3. In 5 years of teaching, I've never had more than 1 student express interest in anything other than spotlight heroism. And you see that as progress, Jin Wu said, understanding the subtext. A few students questioning the dominant paradigm, Aizawa's exp. Reshin was serious. In a society where hero culture is as entrenched as it is here, getting anyone to question anything is significant progress. These kids have been raised on All Might merchandise and hero rankings, and the idea that being the #1 hero is the ultimate achievement. He gestured vaguely. You show up and casually demonstrate that strength doesn't require recognition, that effectiveness doesn't need publicity, that heroism can exist completely outside the system they've been trained to aspire to. That's revolutionary, whether you intend it to be or not. Jin Wu was quiet, processing the implications. I'm not trying to start a revolution, Aizawa. I'm just trying to operate on my own terms. The underground hero nodded. I know, that's why it's working. If you were actively trying to recruit students away from traditional heroism, they'd resist on principle. But you're just existing, being competent, solving problems. And in doing so, you're forcing them to confront questions they've never asked themselves. He leaned back. Why do heroes need licenses? Why do they need rankings? Why do they need public approval? You don't have any of those things, and you're arguably more effective than 90% of registered heroes. Effectiveness isn't the only measure, Jin Wu pointed out, playing devil's advocate. All Might's visibility prevented crimes just by existing. His smile saved people from despair. Public heroes serve psychological and social functions beyond just stopping villains. Aizawa's expression showed approval at the nuanced thinking. True, and I'm not saying the spotlight hero model is wrong, just that it's not the only model. We need both heroes who inspire and heroes who execute. The problem is that our current system only rewards one type, only recognizes one path. He fixed Jin Wu with that penetrating stare again. You represent the path that gets ignored, the one that works in darkness and receives no credit. And whether you like it or not, some of these kids are going to follow that path because you showed them it exists. The weight of that responsibility settled between them. Jin Wu had never asked to be a role model, had actively avoided it in his own world. But here, in this society of heroes and publicity and rankings, his very existence as a powerful outsider created ripples. What if I'm a bad example? He asked quietly. I've killed people, Aizawa, made choices that your hero society would consider criminal, operated outside laws and ethics when I deemed it necessary. What if teaching students that my way is valid leads them down dark paths? Aizawa didn't flinch from the question. Then I'll be there to course correct. That's my job, to teach them to think critically, not to blindly follow anyone's example, including yours or All Might's. He stood, dropping bills on the table for both their coffees. You're not responsible for how others interpret your actions. You're only responsible for the actions themselves. And from what I've observed, you make hard choices with clear eyes and accept the consequences. That's more than I can say for most heroes who hide behind regulations and public opinion. They left the coffee shop together, stepping into the pre-dawn darkness. The city was in that peculiar state of transition, night shift ending, day shift not yet beginning, everything suspended in gray potential. Aizawa paused on the sidewalk, looking at Jin Wu with something that might have been camaraderie. You know what the real difference is between us and spotlight heroes. Jin Wu waited. We know we're not actually special. We're just people with abilities who happen to survive long enough to get competent. They think they're chosen, destined, symbols of something greater. Aizawa's smile was tired but genuine. That delusion gets heroes killed, but understanding you're just a skilled survivor, that keeps you alive. Jin Wu nodded slowly, recognizing the truth in it. You operate like someone who's died before, he observed. Aizawa's smile didn't fade. Everyone dies. Some of us just get it over with early and spend the rest of our lives proving we learned from it. He turned to leave, then paused. Jin Wu, the commission is going to escalate. They won't be satisfied with my non-reports forever. Eventually, they'll send someone to assess you directly. When that happens, try not to kill them. It creates paperwork. There was dry humor in his voice, but also genuine advice. I'll do my best, Jin Wu replied, matching Aizawa's tone, though I make no promises if they lead with aggression. Aizawa waved dismissively, already walking away. Fair enough, just give me a heads up before you disappear to another dimension or whatever your exit strategy is. I'll need time to explain to my students why their most effective teacher vanished. Jin Wu watched the underground hero fade into the shadows, moving with that practiced efficiency that marked someone who'd spent years perfecting the art of not being noticed. He understood now why Aizawa hadn't interrogated him, hadn't demanded explanations or assurances or compromises. Because Aizawa recognized in Jin Wu what Jin Wu recognized in Aizawa, a fellow realist. Someone who'd stripped away the comfortable illusions that most people clung to and seen the world for what it actually was, brutal, unfair, and utterly indifferent to noble intentions. The only thing that mattered was results. The only thing that survived was adaptability. And the only heroism that meant anything was the kind you practiced when no one was watching and no one would ever thank you. As dawn began to break over Musutafu, Jin Wu summoned a gate back to his temporary residence, stepping through the shadows that were more home to him than any physical location ever could be. Aizawa understood him because Aizawa lived the same truth, that real heroism happened in the margins, in the dark spaces between spotlight moments, in the unglamorous work of simply preventing disaster rather than dramatically responding to it. They didn't need to be friends. Didn't need to coordinate closely or share strategies. They simply needed to exist in their respective spheres, doing what needed doing, and occasionally acknowledge each other with the silent nod of mutual respect between people who'd seen too much to pretend otherwise. The underground hero and the Shadow Monarch. Different worlds, different methods, same fundamental understanding. That strength meant nothing without the wisdom to use it quietly. That power meant nothing without the discipline to hide it. And that heroism meant nothing if it required an audience to validate it. Aizawa wouldn't protect Jin Wu forever. Couldn't, really, once the commission's pressure became too intense. But he'd buy time, create space. Provide the bureaucratic smokescreen that allowed Jin Wu to continue operating on his own terms. And in exchange, Jin Wu would continue being the living example that Aizawa's teaching philosophy needed, proof that there were other paths, other ways, other definitions of what it meant to protect people. Neither man needed thanks for this arrangement. Neither would offer it. They simply understood each other with the clarity that came from walking similar roads through darkness, carrying similar burdens in silence, and arriving at similar conclusions about what actually mattered. The spotlight heroes could have their rankings and recognition. The underground would continue doing the real work, unnoticed and unappreciated, exactly as it should be. That was the way of survivors. And both Shoto Aizawa and Sung Jin-Woo had survived far too much to start craving applause now. The alley was still smoking when Jin-Woo emerged from the dissipating portal, his coat settling around him as he surveyed the aftermath with practiced efficiency. The villain, a mid-tier threat with a destructive quirk that turned solid matter into volatile gas, lay unconscious against the brick wall, wrapped in shadow bindings that pulsed with dark energy. Standard cleanup. The kind of intervention Jin-Woo had performed dozens of times since arriving in this world, quick and clinical and utterly forgettable. He was already turning to leave, to fade back into the urban landscape before heroes or media arrived, when he heard it, a small, choked sound somewhere between a sob and a gasp. His gray eyes snapped to the corner of the alley where a dumpster had been knocked aside, revealing a huddled form he'd somehow missed in his initial threat assessment. A child. No more than 7 or 8 years old, knees pulled to chest, face streaked with tears and dust, eyes wide with the particular terror of someone who just confronted their own mortality and found it far too close. Jin-Woo froze, a cascade of calculations running through his mind. The child had seen everything, the shadows erupting from his body, the brutal efficiency with which he'd neutralized the threat, possibly even the inhuman speed and strength he displayed. Witnesses complicated things. Child witnesses complicated them exponentially. The logical move was to leave immediately, let the heroes handle the aftermath, rely on the trauma and confusion to blur the child's memory of exactly what had happened. But even as his tactical mind mapped out the exit strategy, his feet wouldn't move, because the child was looking at him now, really looking, with those wide eyes that held not just fear but something else. Something that made Jin Woo's chest tighten with an emotion he'd thought he'd buried along with everyone he'd failed to save in his original world. Are the bad men gone? The voice was so small, so fragile, barely audible over the distant sirens approaching. Jin Woo's enhanced hearing caught the tremor in it, the way each word cost the child courage to speak. He knelt slowly, making himself less imposing, keeping his movements deliberate and unthreatening. Yes, he said quietly, his usually cold voice gentling in a way that would have shocked anyone who knew him. They're gone, you're safe now. The child's lower lip wobbled, fresh tears spilling over. I got lost. Mom said stay close, but I saw a cat and I followed it, and then the ground started turning into smoke and I couldn't breathe, and the words tumbled out in a rush, the dam of terror finally breaking now that safety seemed possible. Hey, Jin Wu interrupted softly, moving a bit closer but still maintaining distance. It's okay, you don't have to explain. You did the right thing, you hid, you stayed quiet, you survived, that's what matters. He glanced at the unconscious villain, then back to the child. The heroes will be here soon. They'll find your mom. She's probably looking for you right now. The child nodded, wiping at tears with a grimy sleeve, but didn't move from the corner. I was really scared, came the whispered confession. I thought I was going to die. The honesty of it, the raw acknowledgement of mortality from someone so young, hit Jin Wu harder than he expected. He'd seen countless deaths, had become numb to violence and loss out of necessity, but something about this child's vulnerability pierced through armor he hadn't even realized he was wearing. But you didn't, Jin Wu said, and there was an intensity in his voice now, a conviction born from his own journey from weakness to strength. You survived. Remember that. Remember that when things got scary, when it seemed impossible, you survived. The child blinked, processing this, and then something extraordinary happened. The terror in those young eyes began to shift, transforming into something that looked almost like hope, like belief. Like the fragile beginning of resilience that might someday grow into genuine strength. Because of you, the child said suddenly, the words tumbling out with the blunt honesty only children possessed. You saved me. You made the bad man stop. Jin Wu shook his head automatically. But the child interrupted, pushing up from the corner with wobbly legs, taking 2 hesitant steps forward. You're a hero, like All Might, but the child tilted their head, studying Jin Wu with that uncanny perception children sometimes displayed. But different, quieter. Are you a secret hero? The question hung in the air, innocent and complicated all at once. Jin Wu could have denied it, should have denied it. Could have deflected or redirected, or simply disappeared into shadow before answering. But something about the genuine curiosity, the absence of fear despite everything the child had witnessed, made him pause. I'm just someone who was here when you needed help, he said finally, the most honest answer he could give. That's all. The child considered this with the seriousness of youth, then suddenly stepped forward and wrapped small arms around Jin Wu's leg in an impulsive hug. Thank you, came the muffled voice, face pressed against his coat. Thank you for saving me. Thank you for being here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Each repetition was fierce, emphatic, carrying the weight of gratitude that had no guile, no agenda, no expectation beyond the simple acknowledgement of a debt the child felt with their whole heart. Jin Wu went completely still. He'd been thanked before, by hunters he'd saved, by people whose lives his shadows had protected, by guild masters and politicians and others whose gratitude was always tinted with fear or calculation or the hope of future favor. But this was different. This was pure, uncomplicated, a child's honest appreciation for the simple fact of continued existence. And as he stood there, frozen by an embrace that barely reached his knee, something unprecedented happened. His shadows stirred, not at his command, not in response to threat or tactical necessity. They simply moved, emerging from his darkness slowly, tentatively, materializing in forms that ranged from the humanoid soldiers to the more monstrous elite knights. Igris appeared first, the red-armored knight who'd been Jin Wu's companion through countless battles, his sword point touching the ground in a gesture of rest rather than readiness. Then Baru, the massive ant shadow who normally radiated predatory menace, materialized with his wings folded, his chitinous form somehow conveying gentleness. Tank, Iron, and dozens of others followed, until the alley was filled with shadows, an army of death and darkness that had killed thousands, that had torn through enemies without mercy, that existed solely to serve Jin Wu's will. And then one by one they knelt, not in submission to Jin Wu, which they'd done countless times, not in preparation for battle or in response to command. They knelt toward the child, toward this small, terrified, grateful human who had no power, no significance, nothing to offer them except honest thanks. Igris's helmet bowed. B. Iru's massive form lowered until his head nearly touched the ground. The soldiers, the knights, the beasts, all of them bent in a gesture of respect that Jin Wu had never commanded, had never even considered commanding. The child pulled back from the hug, eyes widening as they took in the army of shadows surrounding them. Jin Wu tensed, ready to dismiss his shadows if the child screamed, if fear replaced gratitude, if the reality of what he was finally registered as something monstrous. But instead, the child's face lit up with wonder. "Whoa," came the awed whisper. "Are they your friends?" Friends. Such a simple word for beings that were technically dead soldiers bound to his will through necromantic power. Jin Wu almost laughed at the absurdity of it, but something stopped him. Because as he looked at his shadows, at their kneeling forms and the strange reverence in their postures, he realized the child had seen something he'd never allowed himself to acknowledge. "Something like that," he said quietly, his voice rougher than intended. The child's smile grew brighter, less shaky, the trauma of moments ago beginning to fade under the distraction of wonder. "They're bowing to you," the child observed with that blunt childhood clarity. Why? And that was the question, wasn't it? Jin Wu looked at Igris, at the knight who'd fought beside him since the early days, who'd shown what might have been loyalty or might have been simple programming. But this was neither. This was choice. Recognition, something that transcended the system, that bound them to Jin Wu's service. Because Jin Wu found himself saying, the realization forming as he spoke, "You showed them something they haven't seen in a very long time, maybe ever." The child looked confused. "What?" Jin Wu knelt down to the child's level, aware of his shadows maintaining their respectful positions, aware that something fundamental was shifting in his understanding of what they were. "Gratitude," he said simply, without fear, without wanting something in return, just honest thanks for being saved. He gestured at the shadows around them. "They're used to being weapons, tools, things that inspire terror, but you looked at them, at me, and said thank you, and meant it." The child processed this with surprising seriousness, then turned to face the nearest shadow, one of the soldiers, humanoid and relatively unthreatening compared to the more monstrous forms. "Thank you too," the child said solemnly, "for helping save me." The soldier's form rippled, its blank face somehow conveying emotion. Impossible. They were shadows. Dead soldiers given form through Jin Wu's power. They couldn't feel, couldn't choose, couldn't be moved by something as simple as a child's gratitude. Except they clearly were. The soldier bowed deeper, and through the connection Jin Wu shared with all his shadows, he felt something he'd never felt before. Not words exactly, but acknowledgement, appreciation, a sense of purpose that went beyond mere obedience. "My king," came Baru's voice, the only shadow capable of speech, his tone unusually subdued. "This small human shows no fear, offers thanks, sees us as protectors rather than destroyers." The ant's massive head tilted in what might have been confusion. "We have forgotten what this feels like, to be thanked rather than fled from." Jin Wu stared at his most powerful shadow, at the creature who'd killed hundreds in life and thousands more in death under Jin Wu's command. "You're saying you care about being appreciated." Baru was silent for a long moment. "We are shadows of warriors who died in battle. We remember fighting, killing, conquest, but this," he gestured at the child with one massive claw, "this reminds us we once fought for something, protected something, before we became weapons." The profundity of it settled over Jin Wu like weight. He'd always thought of his shadows as tools, powerful, useful, loyal, but ultimately just extensions of his own will. The system had presented them that way. He'd treated them that way. But now, watching them kneel before a child's honest gratitude, he wondered if he'd been fundamentally wrong about what they were. If binding them to his service hadn't erased their essential nature but simply redirected it. And if that nature included not just the capacity for violence, but also for protection, for purpose, for responding to kindness with something that looked remarkably like honor. "Okay," the child said suddenly, the moment's heaviness apparently too much for a young attention span. "Can your friends teach me to be brave like them?" The question was so unexpected, so perfectly childlike in its pivot from profound to practical, that Jin Wu actually smiled, a genuine expression that felt foreign on his usually impassive features. "They can't really teach," he explained, "but they can show you that being scared doesn't mean you're not brave. They were all scared when they died, but they fought anyway. That's what courage actually is." The child nodded seriously, absorbing this wisdom. Like how I was scared, but I hid anyway instead of running and making noise. Jin Wu nodded. Exactly like that. You survived because you made the smart choice even though you were terrified. That's braver than not being scared at all. The child beamed at this, the praise clearly meaning something, and Jin Wu felt another ripple through his shadow network, his army responding to the child's happiness with something that felt almost like joy, satisfaction. He was anthropomorphizing, projecting human emotions onto what were essentially magical constructs, except the evidence of his senses suggested otherwise. Sirens grew louder, heroes and police clearly closing in on the location. Jin Wu stood, his shadows beginning to fade back into his darkness. Time for you to go find your mom, he said gently. The heroes are here, they'll help you. The child's face fell slightly. Will I see you again, you and your friends? Jin Wu hesitated, the honest answer being probably not. He operated in shadows, avoided repeated contact, moved through lives without leaving traces. But looking at this child's hopeful face, at the resilience already beginning to replace terror, he found himself saying, maybe, if you're in trouble and need help, we tend to show up where we're needed. Promise? The child asked, holding out a pinky finger with the solemn gravity children brought to such gestures. Jin Wu looked at that tiny finger, at the trust implicit in the gesture, at his shadows still kneeling in positions of respect. And he did something he'd never done before. He reached out with his own hand, his pinky finger looking massive next to the child's, and linked them together. Promise, he said quietly. If you're in real danger, we'll be there. The child's smile could have lit the dark alley, and through his connection to his shadows, Jin Wu felt their collective response, a surge of something that felt like purpose renewed, like warriors remembering why they'd once fought for causes larger than themselves. Okay, the child released his finger and ran toward the mouth of the alley where flashing lights and adult voices were calling out search patterns. Thank you again, secret hero and shadow friends, came the shouted farewell, and then the child was gone, swept up in the organized chaos of rescue and reunion. Jin Wu stood alone in the alley, or alone save for his shadows, who slowly rose from their kneeling positions. The villain had already been retrieved by his shadows during the conversation, deposited outside for the heroes to find. No evidence of Jin Wu's presence remained except the memory in one child's mind. Igris, Jin Wu said quietly, and the Red Knight materialized beside him. What just happened? Why did you kneel? The Shadow Knight was silent for a moment, then his voice echoed in Jin Wu's mind through their connection clearer than ever before. My king, we are your weapons, your soldiers, we obey without question. But we are also shadows of those who once lived, who once knew honor and protection and the value of innocent life. The knight's helm turned toward where the child had disappeared. That small human reminded us, genuine gratitude, freely given, with no expectation beyond acknowledgement. We had forgotten what that felt like, to be thanked for protection rather than feared for destruction. Jin Wu absorbed this, his understanding of his own power shifting in fundamental ways. You're saying you're not just mindless soldiers. You retain, what, memories, values, capacity for choice. Baru materialized on his other side. We are yours, my king, completely and absolutely, but within that service we remember what we were. Warriors fight for reasons. We fought for you because you commanded it. But this, the ant's tone carried something like reverence. This child showed us we fight for more than obedience. We protect. We serve a purpose beyond mere violence, and that purpose responds to recognition. Even darkness responds to genuine gratitude, Jin Wu murmured, the realization settling into his bones. All this time he'd thought his shadows were tools, powerful but ultimately simple in their function. But they were more complex than that. They were echoes of warriors who'd known loyalty and honor and protection in life, and those qualities hadn't been erased by death and binding. They'd simply been dormant, waiting for something pure enough to remind them of their essential nature. And a child's honest thanks, uncomplicated by fear or agenda, had been exactly that reminder. He looked at the army surrounding him in the shadows, seeing them differently now, not just as weapons but as warriors who'd chosen service, who'd retained enough of themselves to recognize genuine gratitude and respond to it with honor. From now on, he said quietly, speaking to all of T. Hem through their connection, when we save someone, when we protect someone, pay attention to why we do it. Not just because I command it, but because it's right, because protection means something, because gratitude, when it's real, deserves to be honored. The response through the Shadow Network was immediate and overwhelming, a chorus of acknowledgement that felt less like obedient soldiers and more like comrades affirming a shared purpose. They were still his shadows, still bound to his will, still weapons of terrible power, But they were also more than that. They were guardians who remembered why guardianship mattered, protectors who could still be moved by the simple act of being thanked. Warriors who bowed not just to strength, but to the innocence and gratitude of those they saved. As Jin Wu finally left the alley, his shadows receding into his darkness, he carried with him a profound shift in perspective. He'd thought power was about dominance, control, the capacity to impose will on reality, and it was those things. But it was also about the responsibility that came with strength, the purpose that gave violence meaning, and the recognition that even the darkest forces could be redeemed by service to something greater than themselves. A child had shown him that. A small, terrified, grateful child who'd looked at an army of shadows and said thank you with absolute sincerity. And the shadows had bowed, not because Jin Wu commanded it, but because even darkness, when confronted with pure gratitude, recognized something worth honoring, something worth protecting, something worth fighting for beyond mere obedience or conquest. The child would grow up, probably forget the details, might remember only a secret hero who saved them once, but Jin Wu would remember, and his shadows would remember, the day they learned that their purpose wasn't just destruction. That they could be more than weapons, that they could be worthy of thanks. In the end, that's what genuine gratitude did. It didn't just acknowledge the action, it recognized the actor, saw them not as a force or a tool, but as someone who'd made a choice to protect. And for an army of shadows who'd almost forgotten they were once warriors with honor and purpose, that recognition was everything. They bowed because finally, after countless battles and endless obedience, someone had looked at them and said simply, honestly, with a child's perfect sincerity, "Thank you for saving me." And that thanks had meant more than any command Jin Wu could ever give, because it reminded all of them, that power without purpose was just destruction, but power in service of protection, that was worth kneeling for. The Hero Commission's boardroom was designed to intimidate, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Tokyo skyline, a table polished to mirror shine, chairs positioned to create subtle hierarchies of power. The commission president sat at the head, flanked by advisors and analysts whose entire careers revolved around quantifying heroism into marketable metrics. They'd summoned Jin Wu here with language that walked the line between invitation and demand, requesting his presence to discuss matters of mutual interest regarding public safety and hero coordination. Jin Wu had come because ignoring them would create more complications than attending, but as he sat in the chair across from them, expression impassive and posture relaxed, it was abundantly clear who actually held power in this room, and it wasn't the people with the official titles. "Mr. Sung," the president began, her voice professionally warm but with an undertone of steel, "we've been monitoring your activities for several months now. You've intervened in 63 documented incidents, prevented an estimated 247 casualties, neutralized threats ranging from petty villains to A-rank dangers." She slid a tablet across the table toward him, screen displaying graphs and statistics that reduced his interventions to data points. "Your effectiveness is undeniable, which is why we're here to make you an offer." Jin Wu glanced at the tablet without touching it, his gray eyes scanning the information with the same detachment he might show a weather report. "I'm not interested in joining the Hero Commission," he said flatly, cutting through whatever pitch they'd prepared. "I'm not interested in licensing, rankings, public appearances, or any other aspect of your system. I operate independently. That's not going to change." The president's smile didn't waver, though several advisors shifted uncomfortably. "We understand your preference for autonomy," she continued smoothly, "but you must understand our position. An individual with your level of power operating without oversight creates complications, legal gray areas, public relations concerns, questions about accountability. Questions you're not entitled to answers for," Jin Wu replied, his tone remain neutral but firm. "I haven't broken your laws, haven't harmed civilians, haven't interfered with legitimate hero operations beyond occasionally arriving first. What exactly is your legal basis for demanding I submit to your authority?" The question hung in the air, and Jin Wu watched as the advisors exchanged glances. They didn't have one, not really. Japan's hero system was built on licensing and regulation, yes, but it didn't actually prohibit unlicensed individuals from defending themselves or others. It simply incentivized official channels through legal protections, public support, and financial compensation. Jin Wu needed none of those things. One of the advisors, a thin man with sharp features and sharper eyes, leaned forward. "The issue, Mr. Sung, is precedent. If we allow you to operate outside the system indefinitely, what's to stop others from following your example? Every vigilante with a grudge and a powerful quirk pointing to you as justification for taking the law into their own hands. Jin Woo's expression didn't change. The difference being I'm competent. I don't cause collateral damage. I don't let personal vendettas guide my actions. I don't make mistakes that cost innocent lives. He met the advisor's gaze steadily. If someone tries to imitate me and fails those standards, deal with them as you would any other vigilante. My existence doesn't grant them permission any more than All Might's existence grants everyone permission to punch villains through buildings. The president interjected before the conversation could escalate. Perhaps we're approaching this incorrectly. Mr. Sung, what would you need? What would make official cooperation palatable? We're flexible on many points. You could maintain operational independence, minimal public appearances, even anonymity if necessary. But some form of formal relationship would benefit everyone. Jin Wu studied her, reading the calculation behind the offer. They were scared of him. Not of his power directly, though that certainly concerned them, but of what he represented. An uncontrolled variable in a system built on control. A demonstration that their entire infrastructure of rankings and licenses and regulations was ultimately optional for someone sufficiently powerful. What I need, Jin Wu said slowly, is for you to understand something fundamental. I don't want your benefits. I don't need your legal protections or your public relations support or your ranking system. I'm not trying to build a career or a reputation. I'm simply handling threats as I encounter them, using methods I've refined over years of experience your world lacks context for. He leaned forward slightly. You want me to join your system because it makes you feel secure. Because it gives you the illusion of oversight. But I'm going to ask you a question. Are people safer with me operating independently, or would they be safer if I left Japan entirely and you returned to handling these threats yourselves? The silence that followed was answer enough. The data on the tablet told the story. Since Jin Woo's arrival, villain activity in his operational areas had dropped by 42%. Not because villains had been captured in greater numbers, but because they'd simply stopped operating, disappeared, either fled to other regions or reconsidered their career choices entirely. Deaths from villain attacks in those same areas had decreased by 67%. Property damage was down. Response times were effectively instant because Jin Wu arrived before heroes were even alerted. The numbers were irrefutable. The issue isn't safety, another advisor admitted reluctantly. The data clearly shows improved outcomes. The issue is sustainability and replicability. You're one person. What happens when you're not here? What happens if you're injured or killed or simply decide to leave? The public has no framework for understanding you, no symbol to attach to their safety. They just know crime is down but can't articulate why. That creates instability. Jin Wu nodded slowly, understanding the perspective even if he disagreed with the conclusion. You're saying my effectiveness is a problem because it's not institutionalized, because it can't be bottled and reproduced and turned into a sustainable system. Essentially, yes, the president confirmed. The hero system works imperfectly, but it works because it's designed to outlast any individual hero. All Might will retire, Endeavor will age, Hawks will eventually slow down, but the system continues because it's built on infrastructure and training and pipelines of new heroes. You're a singular phenomenon, powerful but ultimately temporary. We need solutions that persist beyond individual actors. She folded her hands on the table. That's why we're asking you to consider integration, not to control you, but to learn from you, to understand your methods so they can be adapted and taught, to create frameworks that might produce even a fraction of your effectiveness in others. It was, Jin Wu had to admit, a more sophisticated argument than simple demands for obedience. They were framing his refusal to cooperate not as defiance but as selfishness, as withholding knowledge that could improve hero society as a whole. My methods, he said carefully, are not easily taught. They're built on abilities your world doesn't have access to, systems and powers that operate on different fundamental principles than quirks. He gestured vaguely. But more importantly, they're built on a philosophy your society actively rejects. The idea that some threats should be eliminated permanently rather than captured and imprisoned. That efficiency matters more than optics. That results justify means in ways your public isn't comfortable acknowledging. We're aware of your lethality, the sharp-eyed advisor said, distaste evident in his tone. 17 confirmed kills in situations where capture was theoretically possible. That alone creates legal complications we've been suppressing to avoid public panic. Jin Woo's eyes went cold. Capture was theoretically possible if you're willing to accept significant collateral damage and risk to surrounding civilians. I made calculated decisions to neutralize threats permanently rather than engage in prolonged confrontations that would have destroyed city blocks. His voice remained level, but there was steel underneath. If you want to prosecute me for those decisions, go ahead, but be prepared to explain to victims' families why your preference for non-lethal force would have gotten their loved ones killed. The president raised a hand, forestalling further argument. No one is discussing prosecution, we're discussing integration. But you make our point for us, Mr. Sung. Your methods are effective but ethically complex. The public couldn't stomach them if fully disclosed, which means you operate in a gray area that's sustainable only because most people don't know the details. She leaned back. That's not a criticism, simply an observation. But it reinforces why formal relationship with the commission would be beneficial. We can provide legal cover, manage public perception, create framework where your effectiveness can continue without constant threat of exposure and backlash. In exchange for what? Jin Wu asked bluntly. Oversight, approval of my targets, reports on my activities, gradual erosion of my operational independence until I'm just another hero following commission directives. He shook his head. I've seen this pattern before in my own world. Organizations offering support and protection that slowly transforms into control. I'm not interested. The president's expression hardened slightly, the diplomatic veneer cracking. Then what are you interested in? Truly, because from where we sit, you're creating an untenable situation. You're effective enough that we can't afford to oppose you, but independent enough that we can't trust your long-term intentions. That's not sustainable. Jin Wu stood, the meeting clearly nearing its end. What I'm interested in is simple. I want to operate on my own terms, handle threats as I see fit, and be left alone to do so. In exchange, your society gets measurably improved safety outcomes with no cost to taxpayers and no risk to your heroes. He moved toward the door, pausing before opening it. You keep talking about sustainability and systems and frameworks, but maybe the lesson isn't that I should join your system. Maybe it's that your system should evolve to accommodate different approaches, different definitions of what heroism can be. That's naive, the sharp-eyed advisor said. Society needs clear structures, defined roles, accountability frameworks. What you're describing is chaos, everyone operating on their own moral compass with no oversight or coordination. Jin Wu looked back at him. And what you're describing is stagnation, a system so rigid that it can't adapt to new realities, so invested in its own structure that it values process over outcomes. He opened the door. Crime rates are falling, deaths are decreasing. Fear is fading in areas where I operate. That's not chaos, that's effectiveness. And if your system can't recognize the value in that just because it doesn't fit your organizational charts, that's your limitation, not mine. He left without waiting for response, his shadows already mapping the building's layout and identifying optimal exit routes. Behind him, he could feel the frustrated confusion of bureaucrats confronting something they couldn't categorize or control. They would continue trying, of course, would deploy new strategies and arguments and inducements, but Jin Wu had meant what he said. He wasn't interested in their system. Wasn't interested in becoming another cog in their machinery of licensed heroism and ranked effectiveness and publicized achievement. What he hadn't told them, what they wouldn't understand, even if he had, was that his refusal wasn't about arrogance or independence for its own sake. It was about recognition that their system, for all its benefits, had fundamental limitations. It treated heroism as a career, a performance, a competition where rankings and public approval mattered as much as actual results. And while that structure worked for many heroes, while it created incentives and frameworks that genuinely helped people, it also created blind spots. Areas where institutional thinking prevented effective action, threats that fell through cracks between jurisdictions or got tangled in bureaucratic processes. That's where Jin Wu operated, in the blind spots, in the margins between official hero response and actual criminal activity. He didn't need to replace the hero system, it served valuable purposes, but he also didn't need to join it, because the gap between what the system could do and what needed doing was where he was most effective, where his particular combination of power, experience, and willingness to operate outside comfortable boundaries provided the most value. Over the following months, the pattern continued. Jin Wu refused every official overture, declined ranking evaluations, ignored media requests, turned down licensing opportunities that would have made him legally sanctioned. And yet, measurable outcomes continued improving, not just in Tokyo, but spreading outward as he expanded his operational territory. Villain organizations that had operated for years suddenly collapsed as their leadership mysteriously vanished or surrendered to authorities with detailed confessions. Criminal networks found their activities disrupted by someone or something that struck without warning and disappeared without trace. Trafficking operations, drug distribution, illegal quirk enhancement all saw dramatic reductions in Jin Wu's ever-widening sphere of influence. The hero community's response was mixed. Some heroes, particularly spotlight heroes invested in the ranking system, viewed Jin Wu as a threat to their profession. If someone could be this effective without license or official sanction, what did that say about their own legitimacy? But others, particularly underground heroes like Aizawa, recognized the value. They'd been operating in similar margins for years, just with less power and less comprehensive reach. Jin Wu wasn't competing with them. He was demonstrating what they'd always known, that heroism existed beyond spotlights and rankings. That effective protection often happened in shadows where no camera would ever capture it. The real shift came from an unexpected source, the public themselves. Not the whole public. Many remained unaware of Jin Wu's existence entirely, which was exactly as he preferred. But in the neighborhoods where he operated, in the communities that had seen crime rates plummet and fear fade, word spread. Not specific details, Jin Wu was too careful for that, but a general awareness that someone was watching, protecting, handling threats before they materialized. They called him different things: the Shadow, the Silent Guardian, the Unmarked Hero. None of the names were official, none made it into hero rankings or public databases, but they spread through whispered gratitude and the particular confidence that came from feeling genuinely safe. And that grassroots recognition, organic, unmanaged, completely divorced from commission approval or media coverage, created something the official hero system had been struggling to achieve for years: actual community trust. Not the performative trust of civilians cheering heroes at public events, but the deeper trust of people who went about their lives without fear because they believed someone was watching over them. It was invisible, unquantifiable. Impossible to capture in satisfaction surveys or approval ratings, but it was real. The commission noticed, of course. How could they not? Their own metrics showed the shift, not just in crime statistics, but in civilian behavior. People staying out later in previously dangerous neighborhoods, businesses opening in areas that had been considered too risky, children playing in parks that had been abandoned to criminal elements. The changes were too significant to ignore, too valuable to dismiss. But attributing them to an unlicensed, unranked individual who refused to participate in their system created cognitive dissonance they struggled to resolve. He's creating a parallel structure, one analyst reported during an internal commission meeting that Jin Wu learned about later through his information networks. Not competing with heroes directly, but establishing an alternative model of protection. Communities are starting to differentiate between hero help and shadow help. They appreciate both, but trust the latter more for certain types of threats. That's unprecedented. The commission president had reportedly responded with frustrated pragmatism: "Then we ADA. PT, if we can't control him, we work around him, acknowledge his existence without endorsing it, create frameworks that complement rather than compete." It was, Jin Wu reflected when he learned of this, the first truly intelligent response they'd offered. They were finally accepting what he'd been demonstrating all along, that effective heroism didn't require their approval, that safety could be achieved through multiple approaches, that their system, while valuable, wasn't the only valid model. They were evolving, slowly, reluctantly, but genuinely, learning to exist alongside something they couldn't categorize or control. The hero students at UA noticed the changes too. In Aizawa's classes, discussions about heroism became more nuanced. Midoriya's notebooks filled with analysis not just of quirks and techniques, but of operational philosophies. Questions about when to prioritize capture versus neutralization, about whether public recognition was necessary for effective heroism or actually counterproductive in certain contexts, about how to measure success when traditional metrics didn't apply. Jin Wu-san is changing how we think about being heroes, Midoriya confided to All Might one evening, his voice troubled but thoughtful. Not that your way is wrong, but he's showing us there are other ways, ways that might be better for certain situations, and I don't know how to reconcile that with becoming the symbol of peace like you were. All Might's response was surprisingly measured. Young Midoriya, the world doesn't need another me, it needs you. And part of becoming the best hero you can be is understanding that heroism has many faces, some bright and inspiring, some dark and unseen. Both protect people, both matter. The question isn't which is better, but which approaches you can integrate into your own heroic identity. The emaciated symbol smiled. I built my career on being visible, on inspiring hope through my presence, but I'm not naive enough to believe that's the only valuable approach. The world needs shadows as well as light, always has. That evolution in thinking, from All Might himself, from students, from underground heroes, even reluctantly from the Commission, represented something profound. Not a rejection of traditional heroism, but an expansion of it. A recognition that the hero society they'd built, while remarkable, had been incomplete. Too focused on what could be measured and publicized and ranked. Too dependent on structures that required heroes to fit certain molds and follow certain paths. Jin Wu's refusal to participate in that system wasn't destroying it. It was forcing it to grow, to develop depth alongside its existing breadth, to acknowledge that protection could come from sources that didn't wear costumes or give interviews or compete for rankings. That safety didn't require a smiling face and a reassuring press conference. That sometimes the most effective heroism was the kind that happened in shadows, unacknowledged and unranked, measured only by outcomes rather than optics. Crime rates continued falling, not because of new legislation or increased hero patrols or better training programs, though those helped, but because criminals were learning that in certain areas, at certain times, someone was watching who didn't care about arrest quotas or non-lethal protocols or due process, someone who would simply end threats with clinical efficiency and disappear. That fear, the fear of truly effective consequences, created deterrence that all the spotlight heroes and public trials couldn't match. Deaths decreased, not just from villain attacks, but from the secondary violence that rippled through communities where criminal organizations operated. Human trafficking rings found their operations constantly disrupted. Drug networks couldn't establish stable distribution. Illegal quirk experimentation facilities were discovered by authorities with suspiciously detailed anonymous tips about their locations and operations. The result was communities healing, families rebuilding. Children growing up with less exposure to violence and fear. And fear itself faded, not completely, that would be naive, but measurably, quantifiably. People walked streets at night that had been dangerous for years. Businesses invested in neighborhoods that had been written off. The psychological burden of living in constant threat awareness lifted, creating space for communities to thrive rather than merely survive. It was the kind of comprehensive improvement that hero society had always claimed to provide, but had struggled to achieve in practice. All without Jin Wu ever appearing in a ranking, without a single official commendation, without his name in any public database or his face on any hero merchandise. He was a shadow, literal and metaphorical, that operated in the margins of hero society and proved through pure results that heroism didn't require recognition to be effective. That protection didn't need publicity to be real. That safety could be achieved by someone who wanted nothing more than to be left alone to do necessary work. The hero society was evolving, not by shining brighter, but by growing deeper shadows, by acknowledging that the light they'd built their entire system around was only half the picture. That darkness, when wielded with precision and purpose, provided protection just as valuable as any symbol of peace's smile. Different in execution, different in philosophy, but equal in ultimate value to the people who benefited from both. Jin Wu watched this evolution with quiet satisfaction, standing on a rooftop as dawn broke over Musutafu, his shadows dispersing to rest after another night of silent protection. He hadn't set out to change anything, hadn't intended to challenge the hero system or create new models of heroism. He'd simply refused to compromise his principles, refused to participate in structures that didn't serve his purposes, refused to accept that power required official sanction to be used responsibly. And in that refusal, that simple, stubborn insistence on operating according to his own definition of what mattered, he demonstrated something the hero world had forgotten. That system served people, not the other way around. That effectiveness mattered more than recognition. That the truest heroism was done not for applause or rank or symbol, but simply because it needed doing and you had the power to do it. The sun rose over a safer city, over communities that trusted in protection they couldn't name from a guardian they'd never thank, over a hero society slowly, reluctantly learning to value shadows as much as light. And Jin Wu, the Shadow Monarch who'd refused every attempt to make him fit their definitions, stood watching with the satisfaction of someone who'd proven a simple truth. You didn't need to be seen to matter. You just needed to be effective. That was his definition of hero, and whether hero society accepted it or not, the results spoke for themselves.